we all pretty much went to Danny right after. And I believe it was Kevin Kurz who asked the first question about the Brad Shaw news, about the fact that Brad Shaw obviously didn't get the job. And I reported yesterday afternoon that he is not going to be an assistant. Yeah. And Kevin asked him about that. And basically what Danny said, number one, he confirmed what I reported, that, he talked to Brad Shaw yesterday. Shaw said that he just, wasn't really able to be fully invested after going through the process.
Big dub for Charlie. Nice.
Hey, but what I thought was very interesting about what Danny said in his answer was essentially that, look, Shaw was a major part of this process. We really liked him. We have a lot of respect for him. But, and I don't want to say this is an exact quote because I don't remember what the exact words were, but the gist of it was, but we had a chance to get Rick Tocchet. And it just crystallized and solidified just how highly they think of this guy.
And that's pretty much what we have been through this whole process. We kind of, I think at least in my head, broke it down. Okay, we have Brad Shaw. We'd like to keep him around in some capacity. And guess what? If we can't get our number one target, who was very clearly Rick Tocchet from like a month and a half before they even fired the previous head coach, we have this guy who we do think very highly of in Brad Shaw as a teacher and a communicator. And you have the small sample at the end of the season, but the players definitely didn't want to mutiny, which is...
it's an improvement.
It's an improvement, so we have this, and then... But we do have this number one target over here who, again, we've been talking about since like January. Yeah. They're able to get him, and it's, Brad, we'd love you to hang around, but we understand. And he's like, well, I'm glad you understand because WTF, I was just here in the, in your back pocket, which is like the phrase I used a couple of weeks ago. Like, well, we always have Brad Shaw in the back pocket. I could totally, as much as I wanted Shaw to stay, we recorded a mini pod yesterday talking about could Brad Shaw stick around. And of course, before we had a chance to edit and post it, Charlie broke the story.
He said he's not.
His content ruining my own content. So thanks a lot, Chuck.
Sorry.
Come on.
Charlie was in it too.
And Bill, this is all for naught.
So do we, all right, let's do the Shaw thing. Cause we haven't really talked about it. And the thing we did is lost to the ether now.
Sure.
We all, I think, wanted Shaw to stay in some capacity. I think we all kind of liked Brad Shaw and the job he did with the defense, the penalty kill, all that stuff. Where do you think this goes now? There was the Luke Richardson rumors.
I heard Luke Richardson thrown around a couple times today, just talking to people. Seems like that makes sense, at least to them. And, obviously it's going to bring up the former Flyer thing, but it's clear they don't care. It's clear they don't care. Yeah. I mean, Luke Richardson, he's a former NHL head coach.
He was a head coach. He was on my list of candidates, not like a top tier one, but we had to fill some time at some point, talking about head coaches. And Luke Richardson is available. And I think he is one of those guys as a head coach. If he wasn't a former Flyer, I'd be like, maybe not Jay Woodcroft, because he actually had tangible success, but all right, he was coaching the Chicago Blackhawks, whose best player is 18. Yeah. What were the expectations for this team when it's his one line mate is Nick Foligno, what exactly can we actually draw from Luke Richardson? Maybe he's one of these dudes who deserved another shot or at least another look. If they were to bring him in, listen, we've had our fun with the former Flyer thing. And
it is ridiculous.
And we will continue to.
It is the point of parody.
This won't drive me nearly as insane, quite honestly.
It seems like it's going down that road now. Tocchet said they still have a lot of work to do. Obviously, this isn't something I think it's going to happen where they're going to name all the assistant coaches tomorrow. I don't think it's going to go that route, but it does seem like Richardson's name has been thrown around enough. Going back to Shaw, though, it's hard for me to know if this was always the inevitable outcome. My understanding is that it hurt Shaw, that he was hurt because he felt like he was the guy. He felt like he was the best option. And if it was handled differently, would he have been more open to staying? Maybe. Because my understanding of what essentially went down was...
Yeah, you broke down the timeline.
Yeah, which is basically they had conversations at the end of the season before he left. Shaw doesn't... they have a house in the Philly area. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they probably will be selling it now. But his family has a house in the Philly area. But they went back to Canada. So they were in Canada. And then at some point, the Flyers reached out to Brad and basically said, we want you to come back in for a real big formal interview. And he spent quite a long time preparing for that, did the interview, and then shortly thereafter, it became abundantly clear via rumors and everything that was breaking that Tocchet was going to get the job. And I think there may have been a little bit of like, you know, why did you make me go through all this if you were just going to give it to Tocchet? I don't think that the Flyers meant it in that way. I think they probably were looking at it as, we don't know if Tocchet is even going to take this job. So we think Brad Shaw very well might be our next choice. So we're going to bring him in. And if the Tocchet thing falls through, or if Tocchet is insufficiently committed to the idea of being a Flyers coach, I'm sure they've talked to him through back channels over the course of the last few months. But in the formal process, if he, you know, steps into that room and is like, nah, I want us to go out and, you know, make 3 big trades this summer or else I'm not coming, they're probably going to say no. But as long as he came in, because I pushed Danny in our scrum after the thing, I pushed him and I basically said that, you know, was he always your top choice? And Danny's initial response was, well, we wanted to see if he really wanted the job and we wanted to see if we clicked with him. And then I kind of pushed a little bit more and I'm like, but if he said he wanted the job, was he always your top choice? And Danny was like, well, I don't really think of it that way. I think that's actually probably what it was.
So yes.
Yes. So yes.
So yes.
Let's not mince words here.
But my point is that I think that because there was, I believe, legitimate uncertainty from the Flyers' perspective about whether they were going to get Tocchet, they went pretty far down the road with Shaw. And I wonder if the situation had been like Tocchet gets the job 2 days after he cuts ties with Vancouver, might they have been able to keep Shaw? I don't know. Maybe the hurt still would have been there. Maybe it wouldn't have been as much. But I don't necessarily think it was like incompetence on the part of the Flyers. I just think that they didn't know for sure that Tocchet was going to be available and be fully committed. It's just that once they realized he was available and fully committed, things got done quickly and Shaw kind of felt like he was left holding the bag.
I mean, there was the rumor at the end of the season before, like, it eventually got dispelled, but it was like, yeah, Vancouver's going to exercise that option and kind of hold him hostage.
That was legitimate speculation.
That was like a thing people were saying for a little bit, so you really didn't know. And we talked about this a little yesterday. Like, yeah, I would have loved to keep Brad Shaw, and I think it would have been, for continuity's sake, good for the defenseman he has been developing, and for the ones who are on their way. Like, I don't know, I kind of like the progress I've seen these other guys make, so yeah, let's try it with Bonk and McDonald and all these other guys as well. But this is one of those things I can't hold against the Fly. Like, if you, and listen, I don't know, I wasn't the highest on Rick Tocchet, but if you think this is the end all be all, this is your number one guy, you have to do what it takes to get him. Well, that's what it comes down to.
They're clearly confident in Rick Tocchet being the guy, and that's the biggest factor here. If you're confident that a coach is the guy, you have to be confident also that who he hires as assistants are also going to be the guys, the right guys for the job. So when you put the faith in Tocchet, you're also putting the faith in who he then chooses as his assistants from there.
My understanding, and I don't know this for a fact, but my understanding is the Flyers were very open to the idea of Tocchet taking on Shaw as an assistant. Now, that was dependent upon, because they didn't know each other. There was no pre-existing relationship between Tocchet and Shaw. So that was going to be dependent upon like them having conversations and realizing they don't hate each other, that they can click. But Shaw's so easy to deal with. I don't think that would have been a problem. I mean, God, Brad Shaw is best friends with John Tortorella, like the most difficult human in hockey. If you can be friends with him, you can be friends with anyone. So I don't think that would have been a deal breaker. I just think that in the end, Shaw didn't feel comfortable taking his old position after everything that had went down, and it's hard to blame him. Like,
no, not at all.
I don't know. I would have loved to have kept for the Flyers to have kept him, because I think he's really good at what he does. I do. I just feel like, look at it from Shaw's perspective. He's seeing all the same rumors we're hearing. He's in the hockey world. He's hearing the same rumors we're hearing about everybody being like, this is Tocchet's job. It's Tocchet's job. It's Tocchet's job. And then the Flyers bring you along the way in the process and make it feel like you have a real shot. And then you do the interview, and then they go and hire the guy who everyone has been saying since February was going to get the job.
Yeah.
It's easy for you to feel like, oh, so you were always going to do this and you were just stringing me along as the second choice, which again, isn't necessarily wrong and an incorrect interpretation from the Flyers' perspective, though. Like, they can't put all their eggs in the Tocchet basket if he then says no, and then you lose out on your second choice too. So it's a tough situation all around. I totally understand why Shaw felt especially spurned given the way it went, but I see why the Flyers did what they did too.
I think I can relate this to something Tocchet talked about, at least his explanation of the Miller and Pettersson feud, whatever. There's not always a bad guy. Sometimes things just don't work out, and that's how I look at the Shaw thing. Like, from Shaw's perspective, I can imagine him just being like, I did everything I could have done.
Yes.
Like, I took
and I think he did.
Like,
I think he absolutely did.
Like, look at the strides some of the defensemen on this team have made, including guys who, like, a year ago, we were like, he stinks. You know, like, look at some of the strides some of these players have made. Look at what the penalty kill did last year. Like, you have my entire resume to judge me on, plus the interviews, and I think I did everything. If I'm just not your guy, like, I got to look for other opportunities. And I can see even him thinking, how do I then go back to, like, do you lose credibility with the players who did love you? Like, they thought that they know he got interviewed. He was going to be the head coach. And now, all right, he's back in the job he was in before. Like, that's kind of, I don't know about lose credibility, but just like, what if they all loved Shaw? Now, do they, like, kind of hold it against Rick Tocchet?
I don't think that would have happened, but I just think, and ultimately, I don't think Shaw's going to get a head coaching job. I think he's going to take an assistant job somewhere else and do a great job. So I don't think this was like, well, I'm going to hold out for a head coaching job. He knows he's probably going to get a similar job elsewhere. It's just that he would have felt weird having the same job after going through the process and coaching under the guy who beat you out for the job. Like, I saw somebody in our chat mention this, and it's a fair point. It wasn't like he was promised the assistant coach job. It was, you are functionally going to be interviewing for the assistant coach job, which you already had. You can see how that might be, you can see from the Flyers' perspective, like, yeah, we don't want to just bring this guy in without knowing if he, like, can, like, speak cordially with Rick Tocchet. But you could see it from Shaw's perspective being like, so you're making me re-interview for the job I already had? Don't love that. I did see someone in there also say that, what if this is just PR from the Flyers, where actually Tocchet wanted all of his own people and they're just spinning it that it was Shaw? I obviously am not going to reveal my sources. That is not this, okay? This was something that I got, and then the team later confirmed it. This is not PR from the team, I can tell you that.
It makes sense. I mean, if you're the interim manager for a little bit at any place, any job, right? And then somebody comes along and says, all right, you did a good job, but we think this guy's way better, so we're going to put him in, and you have to go back to doing your old job now. That sucks. Nobody wants to hear that, especially when you want that promotion.
Exactly.
When you want that job.
And you believe that you were the best person for the job.
Yes.
I mean, and full disclosure, like, I had Brad Shaw in my top tier candidates. I had Rick Tocchet in my mid tier candidates. So, like, in essence, I agree with him.
Right. Well, I find this such a weird move from a timing perspective with the Flyers rebuild, right? Where the Flyers are at this point where they're almost, like, ready to jump back into things because of Michkov and everything. But Tocchet feels more like a guy you hire for a more immediate situation where you're, like, getting back into the thick of things now, where Shaw feels like a better development guy for this stage of the rebuild.
Yeah. And I did think, because you tweeted this, and it was like Danny Briere's basically, it was like,
it was his lead.
He's our coach, blah, blah, blah. And before you ask any questions, the plan doesn't change.
The plan doesn't change.